Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we review something that I actually reviewed part 1 of months and months ago called Broken Blade. Now, Broken Blade actually is two different things. One of them was a TV series which I heard was utter garbage. You can't even find the TV series actually on DVD or Blu-ray in the States. You have to actually only buy the one that I have, which is the film series, because there were 6 films for the show. And that, from what I hear, is a lot better, so I bought that one and I ended up watching it. Now, I reviewed the first movie on my channel months ago, like I said, and the thing was that I was then going to do, like, every week I was going to review another movie, but I had, at that time, a lot of stuff happened and I couldn't really do that. So what I decided to do was I put off all the reviews for it, and I watched it just recently. I rewatched all the seasons, actually all the films. I keep saying seasons because they remind me almost of seasons. I mean, technically, if you think about it, they came out in different time periods when it came out of the movie format. But I reviewed the whole movie series, and now I'm going to review for you guys. Now, I will redo the synopsis for the show because, honestly, even if you did see the first review of this way back when, you might have forgotten what it is. So we have our main character, Rygaard, who lives in a world where people are able to use things known as quartz. Now, quartz is actually a weird object that can actually be infused with people's elemental magic that they have within them to make things happen to them. So, for example, they could put it into a vehicle and then make the vehicle move and actually act as a source of, movement. Or they could use it for, everyday household chores, like, for example, cooking and cleaning and stuff like that. Now, of course, though, they did end up using it at one point for military purposes, and they ended up making things called golems, which are giant robotic creatures that use quartz. Now, our main character, Rygaard, however, is someone that is actually 1 in a million. They consider him such a rarity that they didn't even know if he really existed. He is unable to use quartz, so he's able to use any magic that he has internally, and thus he's called an unsorcerer, as they're known. Now, he ends up getting kind of involved in a kind of war between Krishna and Athens, which are two rivaling countries that want to, take over one another. But more so, Krishna, the one that his friends are from, are trying to really more so just stay out of the war in general, but unfortunately Athens wants their piece of land because they own a really nice area known as the capital, and they own this huge set of walls which could be very strong for defensive purposes, and they want to take over this area. Now, on his way to visit the capital, because he wants to visit his old friends from school, Sigint and Hodar, he ends up getting involved in a kind of just out of nowhere attack, and he ends up falling into a shaft, and the shaft actually has a robot golem that he's actually able to pilot. Ironically, because he can't use quartz, he's surprised that he can even pilot this thing, and he learns that this thing doesn't actually use quartz. Even people that know how to use quartz can't pilot it. Only he can pilot it, ironic enough. It's made by an old, ancient, group of people. Now, over the course of the movies, different things will happen. You'll have more of a kind of intrigue of what the military wants to do, what is going on with the world in general. It's more so, though, less about the military concepts and more about the characters and what they're dealing with. Rygaard is someone who doesn't want to pilot this thing because he really doesn't want to hurt people, but more so has to, keep his friends safe, and he really wants to keep Sigurd, who's, I don't want to spoil it too much, but kind of his love interest, even though she's married off to another character, they are clearly in love with one another. Maybe he keeps his distance because, of course, she's married, but she's always on top of him essentially because she does love him truly. And you probably that was a whole political thing marriage-wise, but it's very interesting to see characters that you wouldn't typically see in anime being shown. You really rarely see characters who are married, falling in love with other characters. You don't see that too often, and you don't often see this kind of conflict that they have in the show going on with the kind of pilots that are vying more not for just their kingdoms, but also personal reasons why they're piloting these mechs and these golems. Now, honestly, what I said in the first time when I first watched the first film was that I thought the first film was just amazing. One thing I loved about it was how they handled the whole mecha genre, because what they did essentially was that they had Rygaard not really per se super uber strong with his golem. They actually had him have to learn, and he learned by trial and error, which I think is really cool. I mean, too often, like in the Gundam series, characters go into Gundams and right away they know how to pilot it, and this is other mecha too that do that. Right away, oh, I know how to pilot this thing perfectly. Rygaard learns the ropes as the series goes on. He gets better and better, which is realistic. And that's one thing I liked about the series. I actually like the characters, and I like the character concepts and how they deal with a lot of things. Now, I love the animation. I think Production IG was the one who did this, and they did a great, phenomenal job with the actual work. Apparently, these are all hand-drawn mechs, so you don't have CGI anywhere, computer images and all that. These are all hand-drawn, which is something that you don't see too often in anime. I mean, they really put all stops out for the show, and it looks really good. It really looks stellar. Now, I do have some issues with Broken Blade, and that's honestly with the way the movies go about. I think that the movies get kind of progressively worse as time goes by. That's a shame, because the first movie I would have given a solid 8 to it. On Mal, and a solid B in my actual reviews. But as the movies progress, I feel like it gets a little bit weaker, and the plot kind of becomes your typical, it's kind of cliche here and there. And don't get me wrong, it's not bad enough that you ever feel like, I'm wasting my time watching this. But I feel like it loses kind of focus a few times. It starts branching into different things, and the characters also lose purpose and meaning at certain elements. Like, you have characters that show up, and you have other characters who are major parts of the story and just kind of disappear out of nowhere. Now, my other issue is the voice acting, and this is both Japanese and English dub wise. Japanese dub characters do not fit their actual characters. Like, sometimes there's old people that seem like they were voiced by young people, and in the English dub, there are characters that do not sound aged like their characters in general. Like, I hate to say it, the guy who voiced Ryguard, he's actually one of the same guys who voices the guy from Clan Ed, not the main character Tomiya, but the friend of him. And I don't have per se too much of an issue with his voice actor, but I think he's one of those guys that you have to put in certain roles, and I didn't like him in this role because I felt like he didn't really have the actual voice that matches the character, if that makes sense. And that's an issue with all this show in general. Like, I mean, voice acting both English and Japanese dub is kind of meh. So realistically, you'll find yourself kind of just sticking with one and, putting up with it. But I'll be honest with you, voice acting wise, it's terrible all around. Even English dub and even Japanese dub, it's bad. Sound-wise, I think this has amazing music. I mean, I love the opening and closing of the songs. I love the actual in-show music. I love the kind of thrill it gives you when during battles you hear this really great score that's playing in the background. I think it was very, very well done. And like I said, the animation's very, very solid. Now, how do I review something that's 6 parts? Do I review it in total, like the whole thing? That's what I was thinking I might do. Now, as if I had to review this A through F, and I'm doing this with all 6 movies. This is like an aggregate score. I'm gonna say this gets a solid C+. Broken Blade, I think, has an incomplete ending, so I feel like it was rushed a little bit toward the end, and I hear that the manga is still going on, so that's probably why. But I feel like it just wraps up too fast, and, it was getting to a really good point of the story, and that's unfortunate because I don't think the series will ever continue. I mean, maybe it'll continue once the series is fully done, but I highly doubt that. And that's a shame because Broken Blade would have been something amazing if it was actually polished a little bit toward the end. But overall, though, if you actually are really into mech genres and you really want something very different from your typical mech stuff, I'd have to say go into this. I know that, you hear a C+, you think, oh man, it's not that good. But this show does some things that are very different from your usual mech stuff, and that's actually pretty interesting. I like that about it. But overall, I do have to say that it just has some problems here and there that are glaring enough to make it that the score is weaker because of it. On a personal level, I did like this movie series. I actually felt all the movies were good. Again, like I said, they get progressively weaker as you go between the first one to the 6th one. But it still kept my interest going, and it still was a decent thing to watch, and I still highly enjoyed it. Anyways, guys and girls, that's it for today's review. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, link the video. Wow. Share the video, like the video, comment if you want. And I'm not going to talk anymore because I'm going to probably butcher anything else I say further, because I am kind of tired, by the way, folks. And until I pass across again in the next review, have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.